From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's March 30th, 2021 as we record this new episode for our audio listeners. You're listening to this wherever you listen to podcasts. And for our video version, welcome to the Sox Machine YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine, as we'll produce more videos for the upcoming 2021 season. And speaking of the 2021 season, we are just a couple days away from Major League Baseball opening day. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about our 2021 season predictions, who we think will be the most valuable hitter and pitcher for the Chicago White Sox this upcoming season, who we also think will be the breakout player, rookie of the year, and our guesses at what the final record will be for the Chicago White Sox. At the end of the show, we'll answer your questions in Po Sox. Now joining me is the co-host of the Sox Machine Podcast. He's the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margulis. And hello, Jim. I've been hearing some crazy things down in Nashville lately with weather. I know you lost power. You had to call me by phone on our last emergency podcast when we got news that Eloy Jimenez was injured, and now you have flash flooding. What the heck is going on in Nashville?
Yeah, I lost power for 3 days, or at least, as Hawk Harrelson would say, parts or whole of 3 days. Really ended up being about 51 hours, but just 3 days disrupted. A lot of emails went through slipped through the cracks, and realized Monday or Tuesday that I had not responded to stuff. But yeah, just a lot of rain. I think the second highest 2-day rain total in Nashville, and just a lot of creeks, a lot of low-lying areas have been flooded over. Some massive trees knocked down in my area. That's what caused the power outage, was just a tree falling down, taking down a bunch of lines with it, falling in a house. It was a delicate removal to get the tree out of there and restore the line. So yeah, it was a mess. Fortunately, aside from power and having to basically empty the entire contents of our fridge,
that's the worst.
I have to go to make a couple of supermarket runs to replenish it. We really were more or less undisturbed, and a lot of people were worse off. So we're lucky in that regard.
And Chief handled it okay?
Yeah, he handles storms remarkably well. Barks at the direct lightning, just like barks back. It's more or less like just a direct response. No shaking, no hiding or anything like that. Just more or less took it like a champ.
All right, awesome. Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad that you're able to join me now, and you've got power.
Yes.
Because in a couple of days it's going to be opening day, man, and we have made it. And when it comes to opening day, everyone is talking about the opening day 26-man roster for the respective ball clubs. And we'll start with the Chicago White Sox, and that's where we're going to start with this particular episode. It only makes sense. We'll get to our 2021 season predictions in a moment. But with the 26-man roster, Jim, I think last week it was pretty clear-cut who was going to be on this roster. But with Eloy Jimenez out for 4, 5, maybe 6 months, it really depends as far as the surgery and how his rehab goes, but he's out at least 4 months of the 2021 season. It's obviously threw a wrench in the plans for manager Tony La Russa. And at least in my perspective, and again, I've been moving, so it's been kind of hard to keep up with all of the rumors on who's going to make the final 26-man roster for opening day. But La Russa is throwing some curveballs at us, and there are some players that I was not expecting to emerge from White Sox camp to be on the 26-man roster. And Jake Lamb, I want to just share a quick story about that. And I know this happens to you as well. Somebody reached out to me on Twitter. They sent me a DM, and how the story typically goes is, hey, my ex-college roommate is dating ex-player's girlfriend, and they're telling me they're signing with the White Sox. And so again, I get this tweet again, and I'm like, all right, good information. Thank you. I'll follow up. And like I always do, I text message everyone that I know around the league that could help me confirm it. Nobody could really confirm it. So I just threw it out there as far as on Twitter. Hey, this is a rumor. consider, Jake Lamb as a possibility for the White Sox. An hour later, Robert Murray, who we have had on this podcast from Fansided, was able to confirm that, yeah, Jake Lamb is signing with the White Sox. And I guess that's a good place to start. What is Jake Lamb bringing to the Chicago White Sox now at this stage, at the end of spring training and leading up to opening day, Jim?
Memories of his best form for Tony La Russa. That's kind of, I guess, the leading characteristic or trait that I can think of, just because right now, at least when you look at his last 3 years, and he hurt his shoulder early in 2018 and really hasn't been the same since, after a couple of good years with the Diamondbacks where he's basically like a 30 homer guy in 2016 and 2017. Since then, the power has more or less taken a hit. The hit tool has dropped off. And so you had a guy who's just been below average for about 3 years, and he bounced from Arizona, Oakland, had a brief resurgence last year. And maybe there's some stuff in the batted ball data that suggests that some of it is sustainable, although it didn't really show up in spring training with Atlanta, and he lost the corner infielder job to Pablo Sandoval. So it's not like he was.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Sandoval's feisty. Like, give Sandoval credit for reinventing himself, keeping him in the game when you look at his body type and you see his decline and think like, this is going to be quick. And he just manages to hang around. So credit to him for that. But yeah, just losing to Sandoval and not really putting up much of a fight. Him coming over and just being he's lefty, but he doesn't really hit righties well. He just doesn't really have a whole lot to offer. The one thing that really stands out is basically like he's a decent third baseman, and as he showed with Oakland last year, could maybe get hot and be an okay third baseman for a week or two. And really, when you look at the depth chart, if you don't believe really in Danny Mendick as more than just a utility infielder who can spot start here and there, the White Sox don't really have that kind of player right now. So maybe that's really the leading factor for why he's here. But otherwise, it's odd. It's not a fit. And if everything's going well, there's really no path for at-bats for him.
Well, let's take a look at the hitter perspective as far as the 26-man roster, and then we'll take a look at the pitchers for the Chicago White Sox. And looking at the hitters, at catcher, it's going to be Yasmani Grandal. First base, it's going to be Jose Abreu. Second base, Nick Madrigal. Shortstop, Tim Anderson. Third base, Yohan Makata. Center field, Luis Robert. And right field, Adam Eaton. That's what we're expecting on opening day. Now, I didn't mention left field. During the press conference, which Rick Hahn and La Russa were confirming who was making the 26-man roster, La Russa was asked who is most likely going to be starting in left field on opening day. And as of March 30th, La Russa says it's probably going to be Leury Garcia, which makes sense. He could both. He's got the nice blend. He can, you can count on him defensively in left field, not to embarrass himself. But we saw in the opening series last year for the Chicago White Sox against the Minnesota Twins that Leury Garcia can surprise you offensively for a series. So if you want a safe bet or a safe pick to start in left field on opening day, La Russa, I think, is showing his hand a little bit, Jim, with Leury Garcia possibly being the opening day left fielder. But if it's not Garcia, I listed Andrew Vaughn here because I think we do expect Andrew Vaughn to get some starts early this season in left field to see on how he handles it. But this is where the curveballs really start kicking in, is when you look at the bench. No Jonathan Lucroy. The White Sox have decided to move on from him, and they're going to trust Zach Collins and Yermin Mercedes to back up Yasmani Grandal. We already talked about Jake Lamb, and we talked about Leury Garcia. And because Adam Engel is still out, and Rick Hahn has said that it's most likely going to be until mid-April before we see Adam Engel again with the White Sox, it's going to be Billy Hamilton. So again, we talked about this a couple podcasts ago when we previewed the White Sox outfield. If you told me in October of 2020 that Jake Lamb and Billy Hamilton, Jim, were going to be making the White Sox opening day roster, I wouldn't believe you. But yet here we are 2 days away from opening day, and that is the scenario. When you look at the hitters on the White Sox 2021 26-man roster, what jumps out at you?
Yeah, we talked about Billy Hamilton saying how it would be a little bit damning, the lack of outfield depth, if he were just to come over and make the club. And sure enough, he has. I guess, though, when you see Jake Lamb show up and have the ability to hold down a corner, it does, I guess, make it a bit more clear that Leury Garcia, as you mentioned, is going to be the primary, or at least maybe first idea in left field. Maybe he doesn't play enough to be primary, but at least it's just, I think in a situation where Lucas Giolito's on the mound and maybe you don't need all the runs in the world, that maybe having Garcia's defense in left and having Vaughn at DH versus, first game of the season, putting Vaughn in left in a position he's not accustomed to, when you really need him to catch, moderately difficult fly balls, which is maybe, all you need from that guy on the field at that point. Probably better to go with Garcia. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it right now. As long as Engel's out and Garcia is more or less needed to be that 3rd/4th outfielder, then maybe Hamilton makes more sense coming in, to the mix as somebody who just can show up in the late innings, be what Adam Engel is on his day off, and just have the ability to have a pretty crazy defensive outfield there in late innings. I think the one thing it does is puts a premium on Adam Eaton to get off to a decent start and be more effective against lefties, because last year he was basically lopsided in that all his production came against righties, which, you might expect for a left-handed hitter, but on the other hand, that really wasn't a characteristic of Eaton's seasons, either in Chicago or his first 3 years in Washington either. That just kind of snuck up on him. So if you can write that off as an aberration, say, well, he's going to be better against righties and lefties, and he's an everyday player. Maybe he doesn't reach the heights that he did, like a 6-WAR player that he was at the White Sox, but can be like a 2 to 3 win guy in right field playing every day, then I think you're more or less happy with Garcia and Vaughn in left field, depending on how much offense is needed that day or who's catching, and go from there.
I have to give a cap tip to you, because you did suggest when we talked about Zach Collins hitting his way onto the 26-man roster that you suggested that you don't need to keep Jonathan Lucroy if Zach Collins is hitting this well, and if his defense has approved, just make Collins a backup catcher. And the White Sox have done that. Yet they are still carrying Yermin Mercedes on this 26-man roster, Jim. And that's what really jumps out at me, at least looking at the 26-man rosters, that both Collins and Mercedes are on this roster. What do you think of Yermin Mercedes making the 26-man roster?
Yeah, I don't know how many at-bats he's going to get. I think it's cool that he made the roster. I'll put it that way. Like, I'm happy to see him on the roster because, he's played really well the last 2 years and made himself a call-up candidate, and has just never been able to find any oxygen, whether it was in September, they didn't call him up then, and they gave at-bats to Wellington Castillo, or last year with Edwin Encarnacion. Just lesser players have been holding him down. And so it's cool to see him, come up for more than one game and hopefully more than one plate appearance. But, when you look at the roster, with Collins being, showing as much as he could, I will put it that way with Collins, like, he still has to prove it in the regular season, but I think he did all he could to win the catcher job in spring training. And I think, it's hard to tell with Tony La Russa, given that this is our first spring with him. And he didn't really dismiss anybody. Like he had only compliments basically for all the players, and just some vague, well, he still has to earn it commentary for guys who weren't necessarily guaranteed a job, but he didn't have a discouraging word to say about anybody. So it's hard to tell if, like, the Jonathan Lucroy stuff, all the compliments and flattery that we had talked about that made it seem like Lucroy had the inside track, whether that was something to keep Collins motivated, or to basically to instill in Collins' head that he needed to do everything possible to win the job, or even if Collins had a bad spring and Lucroy had a bad spring and everybody looked bad, if he would have just complimented everybody anyway and said they were preparing well. It's hard to say, but Collins really won the job. And Collins, by not striking out, by showing a different form of himself, I think deserves the at-bats that Grandal isn't getting, and maybe deserves some of the DH at-bats if Vaughn's left. So when you have that kind of lineup out there, unless it's like a lefty on the mound and they just want to stack righty after righty after righty, and that includes like Vaughn in left and Mercedes at DH, and maybe Leury Garcia in right field against Adam Eaton, then maybe that's the kind of lineup where you can see the all three catchers factoring into it, and why La Russa is carrying them. But right now, as long as Collins looks good, And by good, I mean like making contact, not just hitting for power and drawing walks, but also like not striking out even 20% of the time, then, I want to see Collins get those at bats and see if it's real.
Well, that's the hitters. Let's take a look at the pitchers for the Chicago White Sox 26-man roster. Lucas Giolito, Dallas Keuchel, Lance Lynn, Dylan Cease, and the fifth starter will be Carlos Rodon. And Rick Hahn really praised on how well Dylan Cease and Carlos Rodon pitched in spring training this spring. And looking at the bullpen, and again, this is part of the roster where it gets really exciting because this could be the team's strength. At closer will be Liam Hendriks. The setup guys, we are projecting to be Aaron Bummer and Evan Marshall. Then you have Cody Hoyer, who could easily set up games for Hendricks. Michael Kopech and Garrett Crochet, we know plenty about those two. Matt Foster will be part of the bullpen, and getting the last spot is Jose Ruiz for the White Sox. And I know that options were to be considered in this type of situation, as I believe he was out of options. So if you didn't make the 26-man roster, the White Sox would have been at risk of losing Jose Ruiz. And again, he is the eighth guy in the bullpen, Jim, and he gets that last spot, and which, again, should be a very strong bullpen. And I'm not projecting a lot of innings for Jose Ruiz early in the 2021 season. But other than him, when you look at the 26-man roster when it comes to pitchers, anything that jumps out at you?
Not really. I think the only real mystery was the last bullpen spot, because Nick Turley was briefly in camp and looked like somebody who was also out of options and might have required the spot and had some ties through I guess alumni with Ethan Katz in terms of the high school, Harvard Westlake. And maybe, kind of like what we saw Jake Lamb on the position player side, like Turley comes in late, takes the job because they just happen to like him and they need to give him that audition. But he didn't really look like anything like in either camp he was in. And Ruiz, I mean, they kind of know what Ruiz is. And I think he's the guy on the other side of replacement level from like Jimmy Cordero. Jimmy Cordero, when he's healthy, is on one side of replacement level, like providing functional innings, knowing how to get outs. Ruiz sometimes has more impressive pitches, especially breaking pitches, than Cordero, but just can't sequence them in a way or throw them reliably enough to get those outs. So he's always just been on the other side of that battle. But for the time being, with like Zach Birdie not impressing, Tyler Johnson not impressing, all these other 40-man guys like Reynaldo Lopez, they're keeping him stretched out. That was really the only other guy I could see taking that spot. You may as well. I mean, like, he's only going to be pitching like in mop-up situations in games they can't affect. When you have like Matt Foster being like the 5th to 7th best reliever on the team, given the year he had last year, that is really a wealth of resources.
Yeah, it's a very deep bullpen, right?
Yeah.
And I'm with you with Jose Ruiz. He'll pitch when the White Sox are losing 7-1, or if they're up 7-1, and Liam Hendriks pitched the day before. That's the only time that I think we're going to see Jose Ruiz. But congratulations to Jose Ruiz making the Chicago White Sox 26-man roster, as well as Yermin Mercedes and Jake Lamb and Billy Hamilton, veteran holdover, still getting to chase the dreams of playing professional baseball. Maybe unexpected that these players have made the 26-man roster. But again, things have been in flux thanks to Eloy Jimenez's injury. That will knock him out 4 to 6 months, and fingers crossed the surgery is successful and his rehab is also successful. We'll know more about his status 8 to 12 weeks from now, according to White Sox general manager Rick Hahn. So let's take a moment here. We're going to shift away from the 26-man day roster, and Jim and I will have a special Sox Machine Live, a pregame show on April 1st on opening day, as the Chicago White Sox and the Angels will be playing at 9:05 p.m. Central Time. So at 8 o'clock on SoxMachine.com, Jim and I will be streaming live a pregame show as far as previewing that opening day game and the opening series. And we'll have some of our friends as well join us. It'll be a very entertaining time. So again, check that out. That will be on April 1st. And that show will start at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time on SoxMachine.com. Now let's talk about what everybody is here to listen to, Jim, and watch us, our 2021 season predictions. And I thought we did a pretty good job last year. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. I got the World Series correct with the Dodgers and the Rays. A little bit easier when it's a 60-game season compared to a 162-game season.
Maybe. I could see it both ways, like just a team gets hurt, or like the Washington Nationals, given the year they had where they just hit some obstacles early and decided to call it a year. I'm surprised that didn't happen with more teams.
So for our 2021 season predictions, we're going to follow this format. So while you're listening or watching on YouTube, we're going to give our guesses on who we think is going to be the most valuable hitter for the 2021 Chicago White Sox, the most valuable pitcher, breakout player, and that is always one of my favorite categories. Think like Cody Hoyer last year, really broke out. Nobody knew a lot about him. And he comes in and changes everybody's minds and has fans start dreaming that, he could be a future closer one day, or a player that takes their game to a whole new level. So that's what we're talking about with a breakout player. We're going to give our picks for Rookie of the Year. I think they're pretty straightforward for this season. And at the end, we're going to give what we think the White Sox will finish with a win-loss record in 2021, and then we'll answer your guys' questions in PO Sox. But before Jim and I give our picks, we had a lot of responses on Twitter, which again, you guys can follow us on Twitter. We're at Sox Machine, and you can follow me on Twitter. I am at SoxMachine_Josh. And Jim, I just wanted to share a few of the tweets that we got. One comes from Chef Eric, a proud Patreon supporter of Sox Machine. So thank you, Chef Eric. And his most valuable hitter, Tim Anderson. Most valuable pitcher, Lucas Giolito. His breakout player is Nick Madrigal. Rookie of the Year, Andrew Vaughn. But what jumps out at me is that despite Eloy Jimenez being hurt, his prediction for the White Sox win-loss record in 2021 is 94-68. I really enjoy that optimism, Chef Eric. And then as in rec, again, another Patreon supporter, his most valuable hitter is Yohan Makata. His breakout player is Dylan Cease, but he's got a 88-74 record for the 2021 White Sox. And then our friend Chirizi, he's got Dallas Keuchel as his most valuable pitcher. And I hope that comes to fruition for Chirizi, unlike his other predictions that he makes. And then his win-loss record for the White Sox, this is where I really hope his prediction is correct. He's going with the record of the beast, 96-66 for the 2021 Chicago White Sox. That would be one heck of a year if the White Sox can win 96 games, especially this season, without Eloy Jimenez being around. So we're going to start with our predictions. Let's start with most valuable hitter, Jim. Who do you think will be the most valuable White Sox hitter in 2021?
I'm feeling Yohan Moncada.
Okay. Is it because he almost has to now in trying to help fill the void for Eloy Jimenez?
There's that. I think there's also that, in the last two seasons, he's basically shown everything he needs to show as an offensive player, like, shoring up his right-handed swing, cutting down on his strikeouts when he feels up for swinging, showing the ability to draw walks when, like last year when he was underpowered, that, he was able to still have a batting eye, that he was able to draw walks and boost the walk rate above 10%. So you kind of factor all those together, and you hopefully, the swings from both sides hold up, while he still, strikes that balance between, striking out, or maybe like swinging earlier in the count so he doesn't strike out when it suits him, but also being able to lay off pitches and draw walks. I think, he can put it all together this year and maybe not quite, reach new levels, because I think the previous level he showed in 2019 was plenty. Like, I don't want to be greedy and say that he's going to, challenge like, the Anthony Rendon level or Mike Trout levels for, MVP consideration and like 7-8 wins above replacement. But I think he could do get to 5-6, and with the offense doing a lot of the lifting.
I'm going to go with Jose Abreu as the White Sox most valuable hitter in 2021. And
because he has to.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, right? And if anyone could step up and try to fill in the void for Jimenez not being in the lineup, I think it's Abreu, the reigning 2020 American League MVP. We've seen this before in his career, and I know we talk a lot about as far as age regression, but I think in the last few years, Jose Abreu has done the right things. He's eating a lot better. He's changed out his workout routine. He was obviously impacted at spring training with the late start for him for testing positive for COVID-19, even though he had mild symptoms. And he did not have a good start to spring training, but he started to get back into rhythm at the last couple of weeks of spring training. And I still believe that he is someone that could hit 30-plus home runs and will be a contender to lead the entire league in RBIs in 2021. And, again, with these type of slugging numbers, as well as his ability to hit better than 280 in a season, I'm thinking his weighted runs created plus is going to be 140 or higher in 2021. And really, other than, as you mentioned, Makata or even Tim Anderson, I don't think there's anybody else in this White Sox lineup that could put up the offensive numbers that Jose Abreu will in 2021. So that's why I'm going to stick with the old dog here. I'm going to continue to stick with the key cog in the White Sox offensive machine, and Jose Abreu as being the most valuable hitter for the White Sox in 2021.
Now, would you have picked Jimenez if you were healthy?
Yes. Yeah, I would have.
Yeah, I would say the harder argument is arguing against him.
Against Eloy?
Yeah, versus arguing for Moncada or Abreu over Jimenez. It really did seem. Yeah, that's what makes it so unfortunate is that it did seem like everything was lining up for a big breakout.
Right. I mean, we're talking about someone that could hit 40-plus home runs.
Yeah.
And that type of offensive production and be right there with Abreu driving in 100-plus RBIs and just getting so many opportunities to drive in runs this year and do a lot of damage. I think if Eloy Jimenez was healthy, he would be a lot of people's picks to be the most valuable hitter within the White Sox lineup. But unfortunately, that will not be the case in 2021. And that's the reason why I shifted from Eloy Jimenez to Jose Abreu. Now let's talk about most valuable pitcher. I think this is a pretty chalky pick. Mm-hmm. I'll start here because I literally have money writing on this. I'm picking Lucas Giolito to win the American League Cy Young. I have learned that that's a pretty chalky pick right now because many media outlets have also picked Lucas Giolito to win the Cy Young in the American League. And this spring training, I know it's just spring training, but he is pitching like a man on a mission, Jim, in spring training. And I am very confident he's going to carry that over on opening day in Anaheim. And his opening day start's going to fare a lot better than last year's opening day start, where the very first pitch that he threw went out for a home run. I hope that does not repeat for him. And I'm not speaking that into existence in 2021. But with Lucas Giolito, again, Zips is projecting Giolito to be the best pitcher in all of Major League Baseball in 2021. He's got an opportunity here to be a 5+ WAR type of pitcher and be a Cy Young finalist in the American League. So that's why I'm picking Lucas Giolito to be the White Sox most valuable pitcher, because I just don't see anybody else in this entire staff that can match the numbers that Giolito could post in 2021.
Yeah, I went with Giolito too, and I rolled around my head a little bit just to think, like, is there a way this isn't going to happen, or how would it happen if it didn't? And I think the only way it doesn't happen is just a random injury, or maybe gets hit by a line drive, or something happens where he misses time, and then it takes a while to get.
Can I punch a wood plank? Let's not have that happen.
Yeah, no, but just that kind of fluke thing to where it's not really, it's just normal random pitcher luck, and as you mentioned, like this spring, it looks like he's just kind of toying with hitters, like we saw last year against, like, say, when he's facing Detroit and James McCann called 8 straight changeups. He's kind of in that mode where he can just kind of do what he wants, and he's just bored out there. And so he's trying to amuse himself. And I think that's really a sign of a dominant pitcher. Like when you think of like Pedro at his best, when he was just able to go to the mound and just 3 pitches, whichever one he wanted to lean on that day, he basically could. And I know it wasn't that simple, but he made it look that simple. And I think Giolito has the same things. I think of like Dallas Keuchel, and he could, he took Cy Young votes last year and could do the same thing again. But, he does it with just a way that requires a bit more luck. Lance Lynn, just got to see him in a White Sox uniform. I think there's always like a little bit of an iffiness, just based on White Sox acquisition history to feel like any kind of acquisition is going to have a seamless transition into Chicago. So I would want to place those expectations on him to beat Giolito. So yeah, it's Giolito to me.
All right. So that's the most valuable hitter and most valuable pitcher. Let's talk about breakout player of the year. And again, I think a great example of this is what we saw last year with Cody Hoyer. We didn't know a lot about him. He comes in and really impresses with a 98-mile-per-hour fastball and a terrific slider. You could also pick Matt Foster last year as the breakout player. Maybe they could share the honor because they really helped stabilize that bullpen, especially with the early injury to Aaron Bummer to start the 2020 season to help the White Sox bullpen stay afloat. So looking at the 2021 roster, Jim, who's your pick to be the breakout player of the year for the White Sox?
This is a bit tougher than like, say, Cody Hoyer, just because like it seems like every player who could earn this honor is established in one regard or another, like whether it's like Garrett Crochet, the hype he got last year, Michael Kopech, the hype he got before he got hurt and opted out. Just seems like everybody has some kind of something going for them, and everybody who's currently off the roster doesn't really have that kind of juice to surge up the ranks the way Hoyer did. So I think, every pick feels a little bit chalky, like you mentioned, and this one feels especially chalky given how he wrapped up spring training, but I'm going with Dylan Cease, just because it does seem like he's a breakout candidate, just given how poorly he pitched last year, and he didn't, he couldn't even earn a postseason start, even though there's really nobody to take that postseason start from him. That's just how little faith he inspired from Rick Renteria, and deservedly so. So when you see how well he's pitching now, and he's pitching well, but he's still pitching within character. He still has starts where he walks too many guys or gets in a funk where he can't quite, he gets ahead 1-2 and then walks a guy. That's kind of comforting to me a little bit to know that, that Dylan Cease is still there. And it's he hasn't had some kind of body swap that's going to reveal itself as some kind of illegal crime later down the line and involve like several rings of White Sox leadership being hauled into prison. So I think in that regard, Cease feels like he's going to take maybe 2 steps, just because even if he has those burps where he walks 3 guys over 5 innings or 5 guys over 6 innings, he's going to have the strikeouts this year, I think, to minimize the damage from those walks, which is really what he didn't have last year. Last year, if he walked 5 guys over 6 innings, he probably struck out 4. And he was lucky to get out with 1 earned run, and maybe there were 4 unearned runs that were on his tab. So I think there are going to be fewer of those starts. And I still think maybe efficiency might be a problem because of the swing and miss stuff that could rack up his pitch count. But if you're only expecting like 5 to 6 innings to start from him, I think they're going to be 5 to 6 very good innings more often than not.
And when you're looking at a WAR totals, if Cease hits 3 WAR at the end of the season, I would consider that a breakout performance for Dylan Cease in 2021, Jim.
Yeah, especially if he throws like, say, only 160 innings or something like that, just because, it's kind of an inning stat or a counting number stat, wins above replacement. It's hard to go, 5-6 wins with 160 innings. So if you were able to get to 3, just with sheer dominance in innings, maybe some starts that, where he throws 95 pitches over 5 and can't finish 6th, but just, keeps the run suppression down and hands it off to a deep bullpen where they can get him across the, easily carry a lead across 3 or 4 innings on nights where everybody's rested. I think that's where he's going to come in handy. I think if it were last year's bullpen, which was running out of gas, running out of arms, and you really needed somebody besides Giolito to go 6 or 7, he's not quite that guy right now. But if he's just somebody who needs to be like a Jake Odorizzi type, just throw 5 good innings, the offense should be there to give you a lead, and then whatever is after that is gravy. And if we need to go to the bullpen in the key game, we got guys. And I think he can fill that role for now.
My breakout player of the year for 2021, going back to that 3 WAR level, is Nick Madrigal. I think Nick Madrigal has a chance to post a 3+ WAR season. I like what I'm seeing defensively out of Madrigal in spring training, Jim. It seems like the speed of the game, he's catching up to it, especially as far as shuffling his feet, keeping his body in front of the ground balls. Again, especially if you're watching the broadcast, Steve Stone always brings this up that in March, the infield in Arizona is like a trampoline. And Madrigal is still making very good plays defensively. So I think defense is going to help carry a lot of his value. But as Lucas Giolito calls him, he's Merlin because he has a magic wand for a bat. And his ability to continue to get singles with 80 mile per hour exit velocities, I think will still be a huge factor as far as the White Sox offense, the bottom half of the lineup. And I've always said this when the White Sox have drafted him, especially for the older fans, the fans that want more contact or maybe the game to go back to the way that it was played in the 70s and 80s. Nick Madrigal is going to be your favorite player, because Madrigal is going to consistently put the ball in play and consistently put pressure on opposing teams' pitching and defense when he is at the bat. And I think Madrigal this season, Jim, has the opportunity to post a 3+ WAR season, and for a second baseman that's not going to hit a lot of home runs, if he hits any home runs in 2021, I think is a pretty impressive feat. So that's going to be my pick for the 2021 Breakout Player of the Year for the White Sox.
Yeah, if I may segue to the next category.
Absolutely, let's do that.
That's he is my top rookie, Nick Madrigal, because he still managed to hold on to prospect status and rookie status. So, for those reasons you mentioned, the defense being improved, I've noticed the same thing, like being able to make plays well to his right on the other side of second base into left field, being able to control his body better. Like say on the shifted plays where he's in shallow right field, making the slide, or not necessarily slide, just getting the glove down and spinning and still getting in a good position to throw. That's what he wasn't doing last year. Right. Looked out of sorts, tried to pivot too quickly, was looking up to the base, which base he's going to throw to before the ball was in his glove. A surprising number of ground balls got under him for how polished his defense was supposed to be. And, if you watch him play in the minors and all the sensational highlights that like the Winston-Salem crew would pass along and Birmingham would pass along just of these really quick hands turning sensational throws from tough angles and double plays, that really wasn't there. And I'm seeing it now in spring, and I'm hoping that carries over, when the real games happen and the stadiums have 3 decks. And I think they will. I think if anything is going to hold him back, I think it's still going to be the base running. I still don't trust that he knows how fast he is or how fast he isn't. And when it comes to like taking the extra base and trying to steal, I think the stolen base percentage is still going to be low, and he might still run into a few ill-advised outs. I just hope he doesn't injure his shoulder this time to knock him out for a while. But I think the other speed of game things are finally under his control. And when he has that going for him defensively, he's basically Yolmer Sanchez with a hit tool. And that's a good player. Like Sanchez won a Gold Glove, and when Sanchez had the Gold Glove defense and the below average offense, he was still an average starter. Yep. So when you factor that a bat that hits 300 and gets on base like 340 and can, maybe he's a below average base runner in terms of acumen, but he's still fast enough to take extra bases when the opportunities present themselves. He can do a lot for this team, especially if he's hitting 8th or 9th or occasionally at the top of the order and just getting in front of guys who can make him not run the bases so hard.
My rookie of the year, I'm going to go chalk, and I also have money on this pick as well. I'm going with Andrew Vaughn. Jim, if Andrew Vaughn can have a successful season, if he can not drown, if he can hit 250 and have a 350 on base percentage and slug 480, and he hits 20 plus home runs for the White Sox, and he appears in 140 plus games for them, and all those numbers make him a key contributor to help fill the void of Eloy Jimenez. I don't know how Andrew Vaughn doesn't win American League Rookie of the Year, because the White Sox are asking so much from Andrew Vaughn. And again, this is still an award voted among writers, and they love a great story. And I can't think of a better story than a player, a recent first-round pick, who never played minor league baseball above AA, didn't play minor league baseball at all in 2020 because of the pandemic, and he steps in and he helps the White Sox win the American League Central by playing positions that he's never played before, and he doesn't drown, I think will all point to a very strong American League Rookie of the Year case for Andrew Vaughn, and that's why he is my Rookie of the Year preseason pick for the 2021 upcoming season. But the White Sox, I think, have two strong contenders with Vaughn and Madrigal.
Yeah, it's with Vaughn, I thought about him a lot, and like you mentioned, he's got if Madrigal hits 5 homers, I think everybody will be thrilled. So, if Vaughn can hit 5 times as many, it's hard to pick Madrigal over him. But as you mentioned, lots being asked of him. And if he stumbles, if he comes out of the gate hitting, I think the hard part is going to be with Vaughn, like knowing just what kind of failure is, tolerable, or what kind of failure he needs to learn from and what kind of failure he won't learn from. Because I think when you have like a guy who's, as you mentioned, hasn't hit above A ball, you don't exactly know what he's going to look like when pitchers are using their full arsenal and managers are using their entire bullpen, rather than like spring training pitching assignments to face him. And it's tough to make me feel like he's going to knock out of the park, literally and figuratively. I think it's going to take more time to just acclimate himself to just, the entire resources of major league team, coaching staff, bullpen, team personnel, planning for him, seizing upon his weaknesses. I think that's going to be the one thing that's going to be, keeps me from being too enthusiastic. I mean, you also have the position thing. I don't think that's going to be that difficult for him just because he's slow enough to not make a mess of things. We talked about that before, just like I think from the fly tracking he's shown in the few samples he's gotten spring training, like he's fine doing that. He's fine getting the things that are hit routinely to him. And if things are out of his range, he's not going to make a bad situation worse. I think he's going to keep a bad situation bad. But I don't think he's going to compound failures by like ending up in the net. So that's, that's, I think maybe not a step up, but at least it's a lateral move, or maybe just uneven enough to where you really don't know how big a difference it is from Eloy Jimenez. But just so much is being asked from him. And I don't know, there's really no context for this. No. And without that, I don't want to put the expectations on him that he needs to hit 25 homers and have an OPS of 800 to feel like he's a success. I think it's going to be more of a feel for how he's succeeding. And if he's hitting 200 through April and the bats look good, then you stick with him. But like if he's just somebody who never looks bad, but is also not hitting, like you could just, his struggles could be different to where he's disciplined enough to where he doesn't look overmatched, but just the quality of contact is not quite there. The barrel doesn't get to pitches the way it normally would for if you were facing a more appropriate level of competition, and you just have no way of knowing that. That's the tough part about baseball. It's the tough part about scouting. And I think that's going to be that could be kind of a very delicate job for Tony La Russa and the White Sox front office, who's trying to figure out like how much of this is just learning and how much of this is getting physical skills into shape against the best pitchers in the world. Yeah.
Don't drown, Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah.
I think that's the expectation, and just keep swimming, buddy. And if he could stay afloat, and again, like I mentioned, I don't think it's world beater slash line, but if he hits 250 and he gets on base at a 350 clip and he slugs 480, I think he has the offensive profile to have that high of a slugging percentage and that high of an on base percentage. You take that, especially for a guy, again, who did not play minor league baseball in 2020 because of the pandemic. And he's never been to Birmingham to play any games and be part of the White Sox AA farm system, which we've always talked about, the Birmingham brick wall. If he can do that in 2021,
nobody's ever going to Birmingham again.
Exactly. Exactly. The White Sox will stop manipulating service time. So finally, let's talk about the biggest season prediction of this upcoming season, and that is the win-loss record for the Chicago White Sox in 2021. And I'll start here, Jim, with my prediction. Before Eloy Jimenez got hurt, I was looking at the numbers on how well they did last year. And this is an offense that averaged more than 5 runs per game. And my thinking at the time before Eloy got hurt, Jim, was I don't think this offense is taking a step back. Like, I do believe they can continue to average 5 runs per game. But on the pitching side and the run prevention side, can they still maintain a 4.1 runs allowed per game? And that's what the 2020 White Sox did. And we talk a lot about it, how the pitching just evaporated in the last week of the regular season. And there weren't many pitching options available for Rick Renteria in the postseason, especially in games 2 and 3 against Oakland. And they're obviously not going to be playing the majority of their season against the Detroit and Kansas Cities of the world. But there's still a lot of bad teams in the American League. And the National League Central is not very strong either. So I was thinking, well, shoot, if that number goes up to, like, let's say 4.3 runs allowed per game with how strong Giolito, Keuchel, and Lynn can be and how strong the bullpen is, this team's got a chance to win 94 games. But Eloy's hurt. So I'm going to take 4 games off of that prediction. And I think it's that significant of an injury. And my new 2021 season prediction for the Chicago White Sox is 90-72. And even though I'm cutting off 4 games, I do believe the Chicago White Sox will win the American League Central in a very hard-fought fight with the Minnesota Twins in 2021. So that's my season prediction for the White Sox, 90-72, and winning the American League Central. What say you?
I was following a similar thought process before Jimenez got hurt. I was thinking, low 90s, clears 90, with a cushion to spare. 94 wins kind of sounded right. 93, 95. It's weird, with humans having 5 fingers in each hand. 5s and 0s, are a lot more momentous than like 4s and 9s. But like 94 felt good. 95 felt a little bit too ambitious. So I think that's why I stopped there. And kind of along the lines of you, I lopped wins off their total when Jimenez got hurt. I ended up at 89-73, and that was a tough number for me to come to, just because when you look at the pitching staff, when you look at Dylan Cease and Carlos Rodon, how well they've thrown, and Cease had the job handed to him. Rodon basically had the inside track, and they both won the hell out of their jobs, even if they didn't have to win them. They did. We talked about Zach Collins doing that with the backup catcher job. Cease and Rodon, did that and then some with their rotation spots. And you look at the way they threw, and we could be talking about April, and I think maybe probably in January and February there were a couple of guys you'd see in the rotation say man, I hope I don't get tickets to their game. And right now the way they're throwing is whoever's pitching that day, fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll watch them. So at least for the time being, Cease and Rodon have to show they can do it in the regular season, but they showed what they needed to show now to make themselves interesting the way Zach Collins did. So, I look at the pitching staff, look at the bullpen, and I can see that, being another 92-95 win team, just on the strength of that alone. Just the one thing that keeps me from being too enthusiastic, aside from my general outlook on life, is the fact that Jimenez feels like just the one big blow they could absorb. And if they, are dealt another one, if there's a collision or, somebody gets hit by a pitcher, just some kind of thing happens where, a player's knocked out for 1 to 2 months, can they bounce back from that? If it's Abreu, if it's Grandal, one of those key figures, if it's Giolito, it feels like they can't lose one more player like that. They don't have the depth to make up for that, to where, all of a sudden that 89 wins is now 83, 84. Just based on a cascade effect of players being pushed out of their comfort levels just by who's absent. So that's why 89 sometimes feels a bit too optimistic, just based on the depth. But I think the frontline talent at least has shown, especially on the pitching side, that basically everybody who's there deserves to be there, besides maybe Jose Ruiz, but that spot is fungible anyway. And they really, as we talked about, is there only to pitch in games that are in hand already. So that makes me feel just, it's hard to complain, and I like complaining, and I can't really complain.
Oh, well, I agree with you. I mean, if Lucas Giolito, I don't want to speak into this into existence. But let's just, the hypothetical. Yeah, if Lucas Giolito missed 2 months because of injury, I'm with you. The White Sox may win 83 games if they finish above 500. But with the roster currently as is, and if Jimenez is the only injury bad luck that they suffer, which won't be the case, but
at
if
least
he's
until the deadline, I think that's the key, is like trying to stay healthy until help can arrive.
right. But I also keep going back to this from mid-May to mid-July, that 60-day period, the White Sox and Twins are going to play 16 times. They're going to play 13 times before the All-Star game in Atlanta, Jim. We're going to have a very good handle on where both the White Sox and Twins are against each other in the American League Central. And, the three options are the White Sox are several games ahead of the Minnesota Twins. The Twins, vice versa, are several games ahead of the White Sox. Or they're splitting those 16 games, right? They're 8-8 against each other. Yeah, exactly. And then that even adds more pressure for both teams to try to make a deal by the July 31st trade deadline. And oh, by the way, you got the Major League Baseball draft general managers have to worry about during the All-Star break in Atlanta. So we know which general managers, which teams' front offices can be the best multitaskers. These are the stories that we're going to be talking about during the 2021 season. But that is a stretch that you just hold your breath, and you want this White Sox team to be as healthy as possible and performing up to their best abilities during those 60 days from mid-May to mid-July. Because if they do play their best baseball, they're going to give themselves, I think, a cushion going into the second half of the season where they won't have that intense pressure of trying to catch a team in the standings. They will be the team ahead in the American League Central and trying to continue to outrun everybody else within the division. And for the first time in franchise history, make the postseason at back-to-back seasons. But if the injury bug continues to bite this team in late April or in May, it will complicate things. And I don't want to be talking about those storylines in late July, Jim, if the Twins are beating up on the White Sox.
Yeah, it's the Kenny Williams line about Manny Machado, like basically stay healthy was the plan for him to maximize his earnings, and basically stay healthy is not a great plan. Like it's just
no, it's not.
It's I guess the comfort is that, as you mentioned, they basically have to stay healthy for a smaller window than usual because the games are so condensed that you just hope for, you're crossing your fingers for good health luck, but maybe not for as long. And yeah, if they can get to like the start of July and be in mostly good shape, then you're talking about like Eloy Jimenez coming back. And even if you don't expect Jimenez to come back as a world beater, he's somebody who can provide probably good at-bats just basically on how skilled of a hitter he is. Like even if he's not, like he doesn't have his 40 home run power, he still probably has like a 280 bat in there and 20 home runs, which is useful for a team that just needs professional hitters. And then, then you have like hopefully the deadline and hopefully with minor league baseball coming back, you have some of the, Birmingham logjam or the depth starters showing up and either, providing some innings when needed or, making themselves more tradable. But either way, like just having a bit more in reserve that maybe isn't on the roster right now, but maybe Rick Hahn can add, come July that can supplement the White Sox or maybe replace some guys should some bad injury luck arrive at that time. But, as you mentioned, they don't face them till May and then they face them a ton and just have to stay healthy in that window.
Yeah, it's going to be a very intense 60-day stretch for White Sox fans and also Twins fans as well. Again, from mid-May to mid-July. But that will make the very first half of the season a lot of fun in 2021. And Jim and I are, again, expecting a very successful White Sox season in 2021. He's got the White Sox for 89 wins. I've got the White Sox for 90 wins. And who knows, maybe we're in for a pleasant surprise in which the White Sox exceed both of our expectations. And it'd be great if they could find a way to get to the mid-90 win total without Eloy Jimenez, and then getting Eloy back for the postseason run will just spark comparisons of the 2016 Chicago Cubs when they got Kyle Schwarber back for their World Series coming off a torn ACL. But that's our 2021 season predictions. Thank you guys for playing along on Twitter, and thank you for listening to our 2021 season predictions. But you had a lot of questions for Jim and I this week for the show, so let's answer them next in Po Sox.
You've stuffed our mailbox all week with questions from your tweets and Facebook posts. Now to cure your curiosity on the White Sox, here is Po Sox.
Thanks, Rob. And yes, this is our favorite part of the show where you, our fans and listeners, get to ask the questions. It's Po Sox, where you submitted your questions to us via Twitter or by becoming a Sox Machine Patreon supporter, and our mailbag got filled up by our Patreon supporters. So all of these questions are from our Patreon supporters. So again, thank you guys so much for your support, especially going into the 2021 season. And I know, Jim, you hosted an open house on SoxMachine.com. It was wonderful to see all of the responses, especially in the comment section. And at least from my part, I really appreciate everyone's support as far as the site and with the podcast, and now the video channel as well on youtube.com/SoxMachine coming into this season.
Yeah, no, it's been great, and it's good to get to know the readers and listeners. And I should mention too that this time around we have had no visual gags that listeners are missing out on. So no matter how you're taking in the show, you're getting a representative experience.
So the first question that we have, and actually we had two folks that had similar questions, Jim. So the first part comes from Andrew Weber. And Andrew's question is, what if the story this year isn't about the White Sox hitting, but about the White Sox pitching and elite defense? Seems like the White Sox could have elite 3 and 2 above average starters and Gold Glove caliber defensive skills at most positions for most of the season. And again, Andrew's not the only one that had a similar thought process. Doug Wirtz also submitted a question saying, the pitching looks great in spring training. Do you think the White Sox should put the best defensive team on the field and let the offense slip? I think that is the best solution. Potential Gold Gloves at second, third, center field, left field, and catcher would help prevent runs. So Jim, for Andrew and Doug, should the conversation be more about the White Sox pitching and defense than their offense at this moment?
I would say I'd want the defense to prove it, early in the season, like we talked about with Nick Madrigal, like showing that he's truly made the strides in the field in real time, major league game speed when the games count, making sure that he can, make all the plays he made in the minor leagues. That would take a big liability out of the infield, basically leave depending on what you think of Jose Abreu's resurgence last year, I think he's more or less an average first baseman. And if you think Tim Anderson's like an average shortstop too, and I'm generally there right now, it's been a while since I've seen him complete a play, like a sensational play. He's been able to glove some, but the throw is off, or he knocks down a grounder in the hole and can't quite recover in time to, make a throw worth it. The number of completed exceptional plays by him, it seems like it's dried up, and it's more about making the routine plays for him and just letting that bat do the job. And that's more or less fine. But the infield seems like it's half stocked right now, and Madrigal is going to be the one that changes the complexion of that. And then left field, as the questions, the premise of the question, just, left field being where it tilts, because Robert's great. Eaton is probably average at best right now. So left field will be the one that I guess tilts it in the favor of good or bad. And depending on if Garcia's out there or Vaughn's out there, it could be either good or bad. So there's a wide range of outcomes, but I can see the potential. And I think when it comes to kind of balancing offensive and defensive interests, I think the big thing is going to be just like how homer prone the White Sox pitching staff is, because like Dallas Keuchel didn't give up anything. Giolito is more or less okay. He can get dinged for a solo shot here and there just because of his high changeup approach, sometimes backfires, but he's more or less average when it comes to suppressing homers. Dylan Cease gave up a bunch last year. Lance Lynn was a bit homer prone. Rodon, really don't know exactly what he's going to look like with his new fastball approach. So I think the important thing for the White Sox, and we saw this in 2019, tilting in their favor in 2020, is winning the home run battle at home. Because they got clobbered in 2019 by being outslugged, and last year they wrestled it in their favor, and I think they have to keep that column in their favor. So if they're facing the Twins and you're trying to set the most elite defense out there when Nelson Cruz is showing no effects of turning 40, then maybe I want to go Rock'em Sock'em Robots with that lineup and just try to, just a total slobber knocker of a game. When it comes to, like, say, the Tigers, the Royals, where you're not going to feel like they're going to pounce on for 5 or 6 homers in a game, then maybe you can get by more in run prevention and getting runs from the guys you have in the lineup. But I'm going to be watching that column early on, especially maybe not early on because the Twins don't show up until May, but maybe like by late May, early June, I'm going to see what that column looks like and see just whether the White Sox defensive linemen are playing into it, or whether the White Sox have enough firepower to where they can, they don't have to run Andrew Vaughn out in left field, the majority of the time, and they still have enough to win with. I think that's really the hope and what you're crossing your fingers for, to where they can kind of get the best of both worlds.
Well, Andrew and Doug, thank you so much for your questions. Our next question comes from Andrew Siegel, and Andrew is asking, does Eloy Jimenez's injury create any more need to sign Lance Lynn to an extension to justify the trade?
I can see where it's coming from, but I think it really just puts more pressure on Lance Lynn to deliver now. I think it kind of makes it imperative. I think it was already imperative for Lynn to deliver, maybe not top 10 Cy Young quality, but at least the workhorse quality that he's known for, and be like a 3 to 5 win starter in terms of wins above replacement, not win-loss record. That'd be kind of scary if he were 3 and something with his record.
That'd be bad.
Yeah, I really wish wins had a different name for the other metric, but it's with Lynn. I think it's just more about maximizing his contribution, or at least getting close to maximum from this year, because really that's why he's brought into the situation to win postseason games this year. And the thinking goes, if he's good enough to win postseason games this year, the White Sox will want to try to strike a deal with him when it comes to extension, maybe like during the deadline period, when sometimes those things get done, or after the year, if everybody likes the fit and the White Sox had the budget for it. But I think pitching well this year kind of makes the other parts fall in place, whether it's retaining Lynn, whether it's not retaining Lynn, but having more of a budget to get quality pitchers like him or quality contributors like him. I think that's really the thing. So with Lynn, I get the question, and I think ultimately it would make a lot more sense if they were able to do like a Freddie Garcia thing, where they give up a lot to get him, and Dane Dunning isn't as much as they gave up. The White Sox gave up to get Freddie Garcia in 2004, but it's similar in terms of just years of control of a good pitcher for a great pitcher now. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be cool if they somehow parlayed that into like a slightly below market extension to add a couple of years onto it. But I'm not really worried so much about that right now, as I am just hoping Lynn has a pretty smooth transition to the White Sox, is their 6 to 7 inning guy they want, is somebody they'd love to have starting game 2 or game 3. And if he does that, a lot more things about this White Sox season are going to make sense.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your question. Our next question comes from Rob, and Rob Lederman is asking, how culpable are the White Sox for Eloy's injuries? Eloy's literally so bad at fielding that he hurts himself. Shouldn't the White Sox have stopped trotting Eloy Jimenez out to left field many moons ago?
I would say there's some culpability. I think the bigger culpability is in not having a great idea for a backup for him. I think that's maybe where the White Sox were a little bit negligent or derelict in their duties. I think when it comes to trying to figure out how good or average or adequate of a left fielder Jimenez could be, I still think there was a little bit of room left to explore there. And just because, there are some highlights of him in minor leagues where he was able to cover some ground in the corner, mm-hmm. and he was even able to play right field a bit. And I think as he bulked up, he just kind of lost his way out there, or lost makeup speed, or just, lost the ability to handle himself, like accelerating, decelerating around walls, warning tracks, fences, netting, etc., and just got clumsy. I think, there is some, there is some reason when you look at his sprint speed and his top end speed to think like, well, he just needs to learn his limitations and he'll be better, and he'll learn what to be aggressive for. And because it's really important the way the White Sox built the roster with Vaughn and Abreu already there at first base and DH, and Collins there too now all of a sudden in a pleasant development, that they need somebody to play left field, and Jimenez is the best equipped of any of those guys to play left field. So, having him out there it's derelict, but it's also like Abreu's presence there. And if Abreu had to be there, there's really nowhere else for him to go aside from DH. And I think he is too fast to relegate him to DH duties. So even if you have somebody to rotate in and out of left field with him and not, make him the full-time left fielder, you're still going to incur some risk just by having him out there at all. And I think when you look at the nature of his injury and just the awkward attempt and maybe it was just a bit too casual, or maybe his arm got caught in a way he didn't anticipate and thought he was going to get down smoother. However it happened, it's a weird injury to happen. I think it's freak in terms of how it unfolded. It's not freak in terms of, I think at this point, that it happened to Jimenez. So I think that's basically, going forward, the White Sox have seen enough to not count on him being the guy anymore and having a better plan A. Maybe not this season, but next season and beyond.
Well, I think that's the Oscar Colas, right? As far as the rumored signing, is that here is another option for us in the corner outfield spot. The fact, again, that Billy Hamilton made this team is large part because of corner outfield injuries for the White Sox with Eloy Jimenez and Adam Engel. If they were not injured, Jim, Billy Hamilton is not making this team. Jake Lamb is not making the team. But so I'm with you. And again, it kind of circles back as far as the player development side and the fact that, Miker Adolfo, I'm sorry.
No, it's Miker. You got it right.
Miker, Luis Gonzalez and Blake Rutherford, and, even a little bit Luis Basabe before the White Sox got him. The fact that not one of those four could develop into someone that's reliable, that the White Sox can plug in right now, also speaks volumes as well. And I think it's something that they may have to address in the upcoming Major League Baseball draft, because if you don't trust those guys, well, there's not a lot of outfield prospects right now within the White Sox farm system that you can hang your hat on, other than the recent Cespedes signing. And again, Oscar Colas, the White Sox, that's how they're going to have to address it. They're going to go to the international market.
Yeah, it's frustrating that Hamilton's on the roster. It's also frustrating that they made him cut his hair. Like that's basically, yeah, he had to cut his hair, because of the Jerry Reinsdorf appearance rules. That he cut his hair, and Daryl Van Schouwen, who was like the last reporter standing at spring training, like he reported that I guess he just overheard a fan yelling at Hamilton, and Hamilton said that he had to, and just well, he made the team. Like that was even before they announced the roster. It just once I saw Hamilton had to cut his hair, just oh, he's around. So it's like extra lame.
Yeah, it sucks for Billy.
Yeah,
I guess I hate that rule. It's dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess the one thing I'll say about Hamilton, though, is I think I like him better than Nick Williams at this part, just because Nick Williams is one of those guys who can do a lot of things barely adequately, but none of them, really well to where, why are you playing him? Exactly. It's possible. Like he's shown enough at times in Philadelphia to, you don't want to give up on him completely. But I think, given what he's shown so far, both offensively and defensively, I think he's going to have to prove it in Charlotte, and probably need an emergency to force the White Sox hands too, to change some minds. But at least, Hamilton, why you're playing him. A guy like Williams, you really wouldn't. And I think Jake Lamb's kind of the same thing. Like if you're playing him, why?
Exactly. But Rob, thank you so much for your question. And the next set of questions are our bonus Po Sox questions for our Patreon supporters. As always, thank you guys so much for your support. These are your additional Po Sox questions. And the first the bonus Po Sox questions, I should say, comes from Heine Bird. And this is a lengthy
name.
one, Jim. And Heineberg is asking, while I'm sure absolutely no one will ever understand why Eloy Jimenez decided to jump for that ball and then Vince Carter the wall. What an image. Isn't it fair to say that some small percentage of Eloy's calculation to give that type of effort can be attached to Tony La Russa's winning spring training games matters philosophy? Since there's zero justification for Tony La Russa's philosophy, shouldn't this be counted as a major strike against Tony La Russa?
I think that's a stretch. I guess it depends on how small the percentage. Like if you wanted to do single digits, then maybe. But I think when it comes to the idea of winning spring training matters or winning spring training games matters, I think that comes down to it's a way of saying like that there should be attention to detail. There should be a focus on executing plays, making the plays that need to be made, playing well as a team, doing your job. And I don't think it extends to like winning at all costs. Like you see like plays on the base paths, guys are a lot more willing to give themselves up in a rundown. They're not going to knock over the catcher at home plate if he's in their way. That's the kind of difference in effort, I think, that most players know. Most players understand the stakes. I think with Jimenez, there's more to it than anything La Russa could have said. I think he's still trying to prove to himself and prove to La Russa and prove to the White Sox front office and White Sox fans even that he can play left field, that he doesn't need to be defensively subbed out, and he can get to balls that he didn't get to last year. And I think that would probably take, if you carved it in a pie chart, that would be basically most of it. Like it would be overwhelmingly the color of the pie chart would be Jimenez wanting to prove himself that he can make plays in left. And then maybe a smaller slice, Jimenez maybe being a bit too casual about a play he didn't make and getting caught up in the wall, kind of like with the netting, just kind of leaning into the screen and being like, it's not a hammock. It's in play. Like it's that kind of, I guess maybe product of who he is and how he plays the game that I think is ultimately beneficial, but sometimes flares up in ways that maybe don't benefit the situation at that point. But that's really, I think, what it comes down to is Jimenez showing that he wanting to show people he could play left. And ironically, it's like the worst way to show people that you can play left is by injuring yourself in a play that was basically impossible to make. Like if it were football, I don't think they would have thrown the flag on pass interference because it was an uncatchable ball, like just completely unplayable. And that's going to be the kind of decision making and maybe lack of sense of scale that maybe will also provide additional evidence to the White Sox that he's not bankable for a future left field fixture. Dumb, I guess would be the word I'm made up in search of a word that exists. I think, if he didn't hurt himself that way, there might have been a chance he hurts himself another way just because of that same urge. And I don't think that's anything La Russa contributed to the conversation, really.
I just have the image now of the Vince Carter, the wall.
He was really kind of more Frederick Weiss, though, just getting knocked over and being the bad part of the poster. The wall looks great.
Yeah.
Jimenez being helped, assisted by trainers. Like the wall's in great shape. It's Jimenez that's looking a bit rough. So I enjoyed that, but just in a way like those two words really aren't in this, or two names aren't in the same sentence very often, are they?
No, they are not. Well, Heineberg, thank you so much for your question. Our next question comes from Alec, and Alec is asking Jim, if the White Sox don't start well or don't meet expectations for the season, do you think Tony La Russa will be criticized and held to the same or a higher standard than Rick Renteria was?
I think so, for a couple of reasons. One, I think, is just he was brought in to be the next guy. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer baseball person. He's why they put up with the Hall of Famer baseball person jokes. He's, he's the reason why it makes sense. Like why like Jerry Reinsdorf, totally big-footed the hiring process, and why it's not a total disaster is because La Russa has a lot of cred, and he's done it for a few different teams in a lot of different situations, and making the best of rough times and helping teams excel. So if he doesn't do it, and the reasons are directly attributable to him, or at least, maybe not directly, but at least he has a share in it, then yeah, he's going to get the blame for it, the way that Renteria didn't, or the way that people might have just said, yeah, that's Ricky. We've never liked him, but he's not going anywhere. Just got to hope we win in spite of him. There's also, I think, the matter that a lot of people would be happy to see Tony La Russa fail, whether it's Sacramento White Sox fans who just didn't like him being around and just still take it personally, and some national media figures who just have never been impressed by late era La Russa and don't think he should be around, and might be asking questions to maybe not necessarily spark it or make up things that don't exist, but maybe highlight some tensions that are flaring or that they've heard of, caught wind of. So yeah, I think if it gets off to a bad start, there will be some people who it's not in their interest to cover for him, certainly, and might even, it might bring some people some personal satisfaction to see it go wrong, just because of some things that are written and talked about beforehand, and people wanting to be right and validated. So there's going to be some pressure to do it. And I think La Russa himself understands that pressure, that nobody will feel sorry for him if it goes wrong because of his own personal misdeeds. So there's that. I think the one thing that maybe saves him if it's a rough start is if it's because of depth. If there are some injuries that are not due to usage or deployment, playing guys out of position, throwing too many pitches, just more a matter of just guy gets hurt, guy strains an oblique, swinging a bat, just something that's not in La Russa's jurisdiction, to where all of a sudden Reynaldo Lopez has to pitch innings. Nick Williams has to come up and be something like an everyday outfielder. Like those situations that the White Sox were not prepared for at the front office level. And La Russa has to do the most with that. Then I think the blame shifts to where, you look at La Russa and say, well, Renteria wouldn't have done a better job with this. So who do we blame now? And that blame then goes upstairs, whether it's Hahn, Williams, Reinsdorf, that whole kind of three-legged stool that just manages to stay stable among itself while deflecting blame elsewhere. I think it's really what you're looking at with the front office and how they handle blame. But I think that's where the blame would shift if any White Sox struggles are because players are not available, and La Russa's not to blame for that.
Yeah, you're already getting some of the national media talking about the White Sox before opening day, that the White Sox have to make a move. At some point this season, the White Sox have to make a move to address the void that Eloy Jimenez is leaving in the lineup. And I think some of that commentary, Jim, is maybe a lack in confidence, or I guess not trusting what the White Sox thought process is by being so aggressive in their usage of Andrew Vaughn, that they're kind of hedging, as far as the national commentary, hedging their bets that this is probably not going to work with Andrew Vaughn, because we've seen players before get rushed like this, and it more times than not, it doesn't work out. Whereas the White Sox have their fingers crossed, and they're hoping that this is going to be the exception and it is going to work out with Andrew Vaughn. I think it will, based on the particular player, because case by case, it's different for any other player that's being rushed to the major leagues. But let's say if there's struggles in left field and there is poor production again in the DH spot, there's going to be a lot of pressure nationally for those that cover the game, putting that pressure on Rick Hahn in the sense of, you need to make a big move before the end of July, because you have a team that can make the World Series. Now it's up to you, general manager, to make that move, to push them over the edge and go and win the American League Central and be a serious contender and challenger to the New York Yankees in the American League postseason. The White Sox are going to feel that from a national level. They'll feel a little bit of that locally, but I think the White Sox do such a good job of ignoring everyone locally that type of commentary on a national level, which they haven't had in years, they're going to start hearing it.
Yeah, I think that can be compounded too, the left field and DH problems, if Adam Eaton can't hold his own in right field, because even Hahn was joking about that, well, it looks like I have to solve right field and DH again. And, if it turns out maybe DH plans got disrupted by Jimenez's injury, but at the same time, you got to have bats like we were talking about, more bats than spots, make Andrew Vaughn the, keep him in a glass case to break in case of emergency, rather than have him be plan A for one of those important offensive positions. I think that's really, where he's culpable. And then if right field, if Adam Eaton turns out like so many of Rick Hahn's one-year signings have turned out, then that's where all of a sudden it's very clear that no matter who's managing, whether it's La Russa, Renteria, AJ Hinch, what have you, this would have been a problem regardless. And that's where I think La Russa, even if people want to blame him, won't be able to do so convincingly.
Right. And if Adam Eaton doesn't have the dead cat bounce and Jock Peterson appears in the All-Star game for the Chicago Cubs, Rick Hahn's going to be hearing about
especially that. If the reason they wanted to sign Eaton was because he would sign faster.
Exactly.
Like if they truly liked Peterson more in terms of dollars, but just wanted to sign somebody faster, that's not a great rationale that you want kind of looming over the conversation.
So I guess a roundabout way, Alec, in answering your question, is that it's probably not so much on Tony La Russa if the White Sox do not meet expectations. I think that anger is going to be directly at the White Sox front office, at Rick Hahn, Kenny Williams, and Jerry Reinsdorf for their shortfalls on building a competitive team. But we'll see if they care.
Yeah,
that's the tough thing when it comes to Jerry Reinsdorf.
Yeah, I think if they start out like 15-25 and everybody's healthy, and you have some curious or unexpected underperformers, then I can see the conversation being, well, Tony La Russa is supposed to be a baseball genius. What's happening? And
there will be some of that,
and given that Renteria didn't have those problems, I can see that being a case where La Russa is a convenient guy to blame just because there aren't easy answers anywhere. So that's how I see him being blamed. But I think there are enough flaws in this roster, at least flaws in the depth behind the frontline talent, to where everybody knows what the biggest vulnerability is, and La Russa or the managerial position really doesn't have a whole lot to do with that.
Well, Alec, thank you so much for your question. And our last question for this episode comes from As in Rec. And As in Rec is asking, Jim, we've heard players discuss working with Ethan Katz, Frank Menachino, and Daryl Boston a bit this spring. Do we have any idea what Shelley Duncan's interactions with the players have been like?
I do not really. I've aside from like throwing batting practice and joking around in that regard, I have not seen really any kind of documented instances of Duncan yet helping. And going back to some articles in January where he talked to the media and described his job, it seems like his job, or he might come more to the fore during the regular season when he's helping game plan against real series against real opponents, playing their best players in a position to win. And then you have pitchers probably more on the position player sides. I think probably when it comes to pitchers, Ethan Katz and Kurt Hassler probably have the pitching side of that worked out. But when it comes to like position players, whether it's how to defend guys, how to adjust to swing for struggles, how to what pitches they're getting this year that they weren't getting last year, I think I'm guessing that's where Duncan comes into play, helping deliver messages for in-season adjustments, series game planning, maybe individual game planning. And that's not really something that's emphasized so much during spring training, and really it's just about getting plate appearances and staying healthy. Maybe he has a little bit to say about being an extra set of eyes for a hitting coach, or maybe paying attention to some exit velocity data or defensive alignments, what's working, what's not, who's covering what. But probably right now, given just how much noise there is in spring training, and probably more so this year, given that games were shorter and you had fewer innings, more innings just randomly cut off. That never really happened before. That probably the data isn't there to make meaningful conclusions about the team, about the talent, about other teams' talent. And that's going to be more important come probably a few weeks into the season when you start sensing what's real, what's what's a bad series and what's a few bad weeks. And probably when it gets to the point of a bad week or a few bad weeks, that's probably where Duncan's job becomes more important.
Well, as in rec, thank you so much for your question. And thank you to everyone that submitted questions this week for PO Sox. If you have a question or topic that you would like to ask us for a future episode of the Sox Machine podcast, again, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at Sox Machine. You can, again, follow me on Twitter at SoxMachine_Josh. But the best way to get your questions for the show and for them to appear on the show is by becoming a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/SoxMachine, where we have several different tiers of support with our 2 war, our 3 war, our 5 war, and 10 war levels. So $2, $3, $5, $10 a month. And with the differences in tiers, you get, as far as more exclusive content, you get an ad-free version on the podcast when we have guests that join us. You get an opportunity to ask questions to the guests. You get extended versions of the podcast and show with additional PO Sox questions asked and answered. And you also get an opportunity. You get a first crack at our new swag when we have it in stock. And with that being said, as far as new swag, we have the pennants that are available. And I know that we got some questions during the open house, Jim, as far as that new swag for our Patreon supporters. Any update on that front?
Right now, I'm just waiting on the hoodie shipments come in. It should be within a couple of days. So as soon as those come in, I will start fulfilling the orders that have been already placed during the back order period. And then after that, I will take stock of what's left, inspect all the items, make sure they're in shipping shape, and then put them on sale. So probably if I get them on time, they should be probably on the Sox Machine store by the end of the week or the weekend.
That's awesome. And the hoodie is awesome. I wear it almost every single day because it's super comfy.
Yeah, you should put yourself on the big screen there.
I should, right? Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. Yes, right here. Let me get the right here. The nice logo. Again, it's super comfy. It's great, especially with the temperatures in Chicago ranging from the 40s to the 60 degrees. Right now, it's wonderful. It's one of the best things that we have made as far as swag items. So again, if you're a Patreon supporter, take advantage of the pre-sale and the early access to our new swag. And if you're not a Patreon supporter, you can look forward to that item being added to the Sox Machine store. It's another great way to support us, is to purchase our swag on the site. But definitely do consider as far as being a Patreon supporter. And again, that is at patreon.com/Sox Machine. And we have several different monthly contributions that you can participate in. And that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Again, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at Sox Machine. And if you just discovered the show, you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and radio.com. And for those that are watching the video feed, and if you do watch videos on YouTube, think about subscribing to us at youtube.com/Sox Machine, as we've got more than over 100 subscribers, which is wonderful. Thank you for that. And again, like I mentioned with Sox Machine Live and our opening day special show that we're going to be having on April 1st at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time on SoxMachine.com, that will be streamed live on YouTube. So for our future live broadcast that we have done the last few seasons, we're going to shift that from Mixler.com to YouTube.com. So again, if you enjoy as far as our live work, make sure you go and click on the subscribe button at youtube.com/Sox Machine for our future videos. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching the Sox Machine podcast.